All right. Good evening, everyone. Those here in person today at Kyle City Hall, as well as those many watching online and across the globe, we welcome you to Kyle, Texas for our second annual Dialogue for Peace and Progress and our third event that we've done as well. So we appreciate your attendance and participation this evening. We have a packed hour and a half of discussion and conversation on various different topics. So we're going to jump right into that. First, going to talk a little bit about why we are here today. So it's an extra special day because when we were planning this, Juneteenth was not a national holiday. And as of this week, it has become a national holiday. And so we'll be talking a little bit about that. Yes, amen. Fantastic. So we're going to be talking about that, get some feedback from the panel on that, as well as a number of different other sections. So we have 3 sections that we'll be talking about tonight. The first section will be about Juneteenth. Second section will be a reflection of this past year. And then the third section will be about family. So we're going to jump right into the introduction of the panel. And we'll be starting with our in-person panelists. First, we have Vanessa Westbrook, a 12-year resident of Kyle, Texas. Ms. Westbrook is a retired educator, engineer, scientist who now consults on occasion with government agencies and corporations across North America. She serves in many roles, including on the Hays County Historical Commission, San Marcos Juneteenth Foundation, and Texas Women's University Board of Directors, just to name a few of the many. She is also a proud alum Delta Sigma Theta sorority sister. Welcome, Vanessa Westbrook. Next year, we have another veteran, 3-time veteran, Ms. Westbrook was as well, Marquette Curl, the senior pastor of the Rock Kyle Church, as well as the founder of the Impact Education Program from Hays CISD, the chaplain program for the Kyle Police Department, and Vision in Progress student ministry at Texas State University. Pastor Curl holds bachelor degrees from Texas State University and Kingdom Bible University, and a Master of Arts from Regent University. Marquette Curl is married to Marcy Curl, and they have 3 beautiful daughters and 2 granddaughters. Welcome, Pastor Curl. To my far left, Philip Cleary. Philip Cleary was hired in 2017 and currently serves as a police officer in the Patrol Division at Kyle Police Department. Philip became the president of Kyle Law Enforcement Association, CLEA, in 2018 and still serves in that role today. While not at work, Philip enjoys spending time with his wife, their 2 dogs, and is eagerly awaiting the birth of his first child in the fall. Congratulations, Mr. Cleary. Thank you for being here today. To my immediate left, we have Ms. Morgan Curl. Currently, she is the attendance clerk at Tobias Elementary School, the director of the Rock Kyle Children's Ministry, assistant director of the Impact Education Program, and mother to a beautiful 5-year-old. In addition to that, she is also attending Texas State University, go Bobcats, to pursue a counseling degree that will allow her to counsel families, young women, and children who are primarily minorities. Welcome to the panel. All right, to our wonderful virtual panelists this evening. First, we have Mr. Tyler Robinson. Mr. Robinson is currently a senior at Texas State University, majoring in communication design with a minor in theater arts. Tyler is the current president of the Texas State organization Vision in Progress and also the founder of Galore Apparel. Welcome, Mr. Robinson. Next, we have Ms. Danya Curry. Ms. Curry has lived in this community going on 18 years. Danya works in the field of education, currently as an assistant principal at middle school level for Luling ISD. Previously, she worked at Lehman High School for 11 years as a professional communications teacher. She is the mother of 2 sons and active in the community as far as students are concerned. Danya loves sports, music, and the arts. She serves as a mentor and guide for high school and college readiness. Welcome, Ms. Curry. Next, we have Mr. Anthony Davis. Mr. Davis has lived in Kyle all his life. Mr. Davis is currently a graduate student at Texas State University, go Bobcats, San Marcos, and previously served on the renaming committee for RM 150 for Kyle. He also serves as a member of the Hays County Historical Commission and currently part of the African American Heritage Committee, the Historical Marker Committee, and the Kyle Depot and Heritage Center Committee. Welcome, Mr. Davis. And last but certainly not least, we are happy to have Ms. Mackenzie Smith. She is a senior at the University of Texas at Austin, studying government. She has lived in Kyle since she was 9 years old and graduated from Hays High School in 2017. She has worked in advocacy for the past 5 years, interning for Congressman Lloyd Doggett, fundraising, working on campaigns, participating in police oversight, and most recently in her role on campus as the advocacy director of student government. She is passionate about improving the lives of people and plans to pursue a master's degree in public policy before moving into education and politics. Brave soul you are. Thank you for being here, Ms. Mackenzie Smith. So for y'all that don't know, I'm an alum of Texas State. That's why I'm always happy to see my fellow Bobcats. All right. Well, as I stated earlier, we are here today celebrating City of Kyle's recognition and honoring Juneteenth, which is now a federal holiday. And so to give a little bit of background, we have a video here to play and share a little bit about the history and how Juneteenth came about.
I'm in the water, sometime in the water. Sweet Jesus, He carried me, sometime in the water, sometime in the water.
The Emancipation Proclamation was signed by President Abraham Lincoln on January 1st, 1863, officially declaring the freedom of over 3.5 million black slaves. However, news didn't make it as far as people would have originally thought. The American Civil War began on April 12, 1861, and 4 long years later, the Confederacy was defeated at the total cost of 620,000 Union and Confederate soldiers as of June 2, 1865. By the time the war ended in 1865, about 180,000 black men had served as soldiers in the U.S. Army. This was about 10% of the total Union fighting force. About 90,000 were former or contraband slaves from the Confederate States. About half of the rest were from the loyal border states, and the rest were free blacks from the North. 40,000 black soldiers died in the war, 10,000 in battle, and 30,000 from illness or infection. During the war, slavery in Texas was relatively unaffected because the state experienced no large-scale fighting or significant presence of Union troops. Many slave owners from outside the Lone Star State viewed it as a safe haven and moved there with their slaves. After the war came to a close in the spring of 1865, with General Granger's arrival in Galveston to announce that the Civil War had ended, signaled freedom for Texas's 250,000 slaves, they had no idea that their freedom had been secured by the government. On June 19, 1865, General Granger made the following announcement, which read as follows. The people of Texas are informed that, in accordance with a proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves, and the connection heretofore existing between them becomes that between employer and hired labor. The freedmen are advised to remain quietly at their present homes and work for wages. They are informed that they will not be allowed to collect at military posts, and that they will not be supported in idleness either there or elsewhere. Celebrations broke out among newly freed blacks, although emancipation didn't happen overnight for everyone. On plantations, masters had to decide when and how to announce the news or wait for a government agent to arrive. In some cases, slave owners withheld the information until after harvest season. Even in Galveston, the ex-Confederate mayor flouted the army by forcing the freed people back to work. Those who acted on the news did so at their peril. Many men and women were lynched or shot in their attempts to pursue their newfound freedom. In one extreme case, according to Hayes Turner, a former slave named Katie Darling continued working for her mistress another 6 years. According to Darling, her mistress whipped her after the war just like she did before. Hardly the recipe for a celebration, which is what makes the story of Juneteenth all the more remarkable. Defying confusion and delay, terror and violence, the newly freed black men and women of Texas, with the aid of the Freedmen's Bureau, itself delayed from arriving until September 1865, now had a date to rally around. In one of the most inspiring grassroots efforts of the post-Civil War period, they transformed June 19th from a day of unheeded military orders into their own annual rite, Juneteenth, beginning 1 year later in 1866.
Brief but powerful video there. Thank you, Grant. So next we will get into the panel's discussion about this. So I'm going to present a few questions, and the panel is going to take the discussion where they feel is appropriate, and we'll go in that direction. First question, or first set of questions are, what does Juneteenth mean to you? Why do you feel it's important to recognize and celebrate it? Next question will be, in your perspective, are younger African-American generations, millennials, Generation Z, and non-African Americans, are they adequately aware of this holiday? Why or why not, in your opinion? And I had to update, 49 states recognize Juneteenth as a state holiday, with Texas being the first in 1980. And before, the question was, would you like to see it as a national holiday? But now that it is as of this week, I'd like to get the panel's reflections on that. And before we jump into the panel, there will be a Mentimeter question. So there will be an opportunity for each one in the audience today, as well as those watching online. We will provide you a website for you to go to, and you'll be able to provide us some feedback from a question that we have. So I'm not sure if we're able to post that up. Yes, let's get that posted up so everyone can start getting to that website. And while they're doing that, we'll allow the panel to tackle the questions first, and then we'll come back and get their reflections on the Mentimeter. So as you can see, you go to www.menti.com and use the code 7648708. So menti.com, MENTI.com, and use code 7648708. And the question for the audience is, why is it important to recognize Juneteenth? Brief word or two describing that. We'll give you all a moment to put in your answers, but in the time being, we're going to go ahead and get to the panel. So panel, that's what we have the paddles for. So if you'd like to talk on this section, let's go ahead and get those paddles up, or if you choose to listen, we'll take that as well. All right. Okay, keep the virtual panel, keep them up. James. Okay, all right, and certainly if you choose to listen, you'll have an opportunity as well after the discussion has started to come back. But we're going to start this out with some of our veterans here. I'll go to Ms. Westbrook to start us off.
Okay, well, good evening. Okay, my microphone is now on. Good evening, everyone. And thank you so much for joining us in person, online. As Councilman Ellison has said, this is my third panel that I have participated in, so I'm a veteran now. Woo-hoo! Me and old Pastor Curl over there. So as we think about this question, what does Juneteenth mean to me? If you've known that I've been on these panels before, I'm not only a historian, but a researcher in my past time in regards to being an engineer and scientist in the real world. And what I did is there were three perspectives for you to think about that question: historically, commemoratively, and generationally. So I'm only going to hit a piece and then I'll keep coming back to it. What does Juneteenth mean to me? I can say this: I grew up in Galveston. I'm, as you call, a BOI. I was born in Galveston. And so I knew Juneteenth celebration from being a small tot. And then we transferred back and forth between Galveston and New Orleans. And so every June when we had the Juneteenth celebration, that was something that we always did. I didn't actually realize other people celebrated outside of Galveston until I was at some event at one summer. It was actually at Trinity University in San Antonio. I was there for some leadership program, and they said, oh, by the way, we're having a Juneteenth dinner tonight. I looked around and said, what, do y'all celebrate Juneteenth here too? I just thought that was a Galveston thing. But it wasn't celebrated nearby as much as it should have been at the time. Now, what it means to me is from a historical perspective, when we think about that, the Emancipation Proclamation, which freed all the slaves, that was done by Lincoln in the first place, was to save the Union. Those was his exact words. And that the idea behind this emancipation was that we were going to change the lifestyle. Instead of having people working for free and all of these horrible things happening to them, they were going to switch over and become a environment where you would work for your wages and all would be right with the world. Okay, well, we know that didn't happen. Much got worse with the world, as a matter of fact. So the idea of what it means to me is that if you think about some of the issues back then, there's opportunities where we see those same issues right now. So much can be said about this idea. Now, is it like it was then? No, of course it's not. What it means to me is that there's lots of work that needs to be done among us, and the more people who are made aware of what Juneteenth is, the more people will then, I guess, join together to say, how can we make the world a better place overall? So I think that's one way of looking at it. And so when I see this idea of more and more people recognizing Juneteenth as not the holiday for the Black people, but the holiday for us to focus on being jointly in celebrating peace and prosperity for everybody, then that gives me a warm and fuzzy feeling on the inside that there is hope for the world. So I'm going to stop there. That's my initial response to what does Juneteenth mean to me.
Fantastic. I knew you'd started off really well. Thank you, Ms. Westbrook. Let's get one of our virtual panelists in. Ms. Smith, you had your paddle up to speak. Give us your initial thoughts.
So initially, I do feel warm and fuzzy, like Ms. Westbrook just mentioned, but then part of me sort of feels that it's just one step in the end goal. So I feel like making Juneteenth a federal holiday while several states are trying to ram through legislation blocking the right to vote for lots of people of color, specifically Black people. So failing to guarantee voting rights to Black people, failing to arrest and prosecute killers of Black people, and failing to reform the carceral state that is disproportionately preying upon Black people is a bit performative and hollow. So we're taking it one step when we should be taking it about 10 steps forward. And it makes me happy to see that we're moving it forward at all. But I don't want us to get caught up in celebration when we should be not even asking, but demanding more.
Certainly. Thank you, Ms. Smith. I appreciate that thoughtful idea there, because for me, this week, and I'm sure many of you all have, I've been having discussions about what has happened and transpired this week, and the holiday, how significant is that? Is that a victory? Is that one part of it? Are there other parts to it? Pastor Curl, what are your thoughts as far as Juneteenth becoming a holiday? Is that a win? Is that a victory? Is there more to be done? Should we where should we think about this?
Okay, I'm trying to. I know how to do this because I'm a veteran. I've been up here 3 times.
There we go. I think it worked.
Okay, we're good now. Trying to shut me down. Not gonna happen. Interesting question, Dex. While in one moment there is celebration for something that is past that recognizes an event, it is, as I think as Mackenzie said, I mean, it's a step, but does it really, what is it really doing? Is it just placating a group of people to satisfy and calm people down, or is it something that is genuine? Our nation is so divided, and even the passing of the holiday is contradictory for me. On one hand, we will recognize Juneteenth, and we'll recognize that Juneteenth is recognition of slavery. Slavery is recognition of systemic racism and oppression that happened to African and African Americans or Africans in the transatlantic slave trade. So on one end, we want to celebrate an event while also having the same government that says that systemic racism does not exist, while also having the same government that says that in the state of Texas, teachers could get in trouble in the coming school years if they teach about systemic racism. We have the Southern Baptist Convention, take it to the church world, because that's my world, that denies critical race theory, that says that racism does not exist. So how can both of those things be true? How can there not be systemic racism, not be an issue in this country when it comes to race, but you recognize the oppressive system that of slavery and recognize Juneteenth? It doesn't make sense. And so for me, I am slightly perplexed by the passing of it, and have an eye open as to what's really, really going on, and are things being done in order to try to calm things down. I think McKinsey stated that you have over 40 states that now are passing laws that it's voter suppression. I mean, that's just what it is. Regardless of what you felt about the last presidential election, the laws are designed to keep a specific group of people from being able to cast their vote. And so we celebrate a holiday, but yet deny the history behind the holiday. Doesn't make sense to me.
Powerful comments there, Pastor Carroll. Appreciate that. Absolutely, something to think on there. We also, let's go to back to our virtual panelists. Mr. Anthony Davis, you had your paddle up to speak. Share your thoughts about that, but also I'd like to hear your perspective on, one of the questions was, in your perspective, are younger generations, non-African Americans, are they adequately aware of the holiday, and how does making it a federal holiday impact that in a good or bad way?
Well, that's actually a good transition. I think now that it's a federal holiday, it'll make it a lot easier for the younger generation or the youth, and actually to sort of slowly understand what this is supposed to mean, not only for African Americans, of course, but for everybody. Like we discussed, this isn't just for Juneteenth. This isn't just supposed to be a day for one set group of people. This is an idea about liberation. This is an idea about being freed. That should be something that everyone can get on board with, regardless of skin color, regardless of creed, regardless of background. Now, for the youth, I think one of the problems that we sort of had was a lot of adults didn't quite seem to understand that this was sort of a holiday. Miss Westbrook, she went ahead and touched on this, where she only seen it sort of in Galveston. For me, I learned about this in elementary school when I went to Cal Elementary. Going through first and second and third grade, this was kind of taught. And then you go into college and you mention Juneteenth, and it's sort of this weird, I don't know what this is. Sorry, I come from Connecticut. But it's sort of trying to get that slow encroachment of making sure that adults understand this, so that way eventually they can actually come about, and maybe we can have, teachers and community leaders and people to actually talk with the youth, both of the African American community and pretty much just Americans in general. Again, this shouldn't just be about one set group of people. This should be something that everyone knows. So just to sort of see it for the youth, and hopefully that they can grow into it and get an understanding of what Juneteenth is really supposed to be about, then eventually maybe we'll actually have an adequate understanding for the youth and what Juneteenth is supposed to represent.
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Davis, for your comments. Before we move to the Minty questioning, we've gotten some great responses back there. I want to give those that have chose to listen at the first part. Anybody who chose to listen initially want to comment on what's been discussed so far? All right, Ms. Curl.
Hello. So I would have to say the answer to the second question about the younger generation, my answer is no, they're not being taught. But it's because, just like you said, the adults weren't taught. So if the adults weren't taught, then how do we expect the younger generation to know any better? And if we're banning it from schools, then that just further proves that the younger generation is not being taught. So I would say that right now, the younger generation, they are learning from each other and not from school or anything. They're learning from social media, which by that point, you don't even know what they're learning is right or wrong because it's just a bunch of opinions. So nobody's going to get anywhere until we're able to actually teach it and teach it the right way. And it does start from the older generation and it has to go down that way. And that's not what's being done at the moment.
Interesting. Mr. Robinson, looks like you're burning to get in on this discussion.
Most definitely, sir. Can you hear me correctly? We're good. Okay. So I believe that this Juneteenth is very special, while we're talking about it and walking in it, that we have the opportunity to have this amazing moment fleet from us. And I say that because can turn into an opportunity for different people, other people, to make money off of the back of our hard work, labor from my ancestors. And I say that as, and you can create Juneteenth to be something as you're selling items, selling T-shirts, you're celebrating, but you're forgetting the main thing that happened, which was that our ancestors were 2 years late to be freed. Although while we're shining a light on being free, we also need to understand that there's more to do. Like Ms. McKenzie said and Pastor Crow said, there's more to do. And if we just get caught up in the celebrating, if we get caught up in the festivities of things, if we get caught up in the selling of things, we can we can overtly forget why Juneteenth is so important. And to go back to the children or the different youth that we have now, as a younger generational man, I just kind of learned like really the main significance of Juneteenth. Like about within 3 years, I've learned the main significance, and just to see that from back then to all the way till now, that is just now reaching to the point of its significance is that important to the United States, shows how much that we still, I won't say don't matter, but what we need isn't mattering. So yes, it's a good first step. Like I won't say first step, it's a good step to us becoming more than what we want to be in America. But we cannot get caught up in the glamorous of fame that we have a day created, that we have streets created, we have statues created. But we have to remember that also we're celebrating. We also have to remember that we're still pushing towards that to still become more free than we are today.
Wow, really interesting comments there. And being a founder of an apparel company, I can see where you were thinking about with that. And that's something that I hadn't really thought about that as well, and that marketing and money-making opportunities there. Really thoughtful ideas there, Mr. Robinson. So before we go back to the panel again, let's bring up the Menti questions and responses, see what we have there. I know the audience, both in person and virtually, have been typing up some very thoughtful things there. It's a little bigger than our one word ones from the past, so we have to read a little bit, but certainly I'll give the panel a moment to kind of digest a bit of that. And then if anybody has any comments that they would like to reflect about what we've seen from our audience participation, I'll get your paddles on that part as well. All right, Ms. Smith has hers up. Anybody else? Right, looking to my left here. All right, Ms. Curry, I see you. All right, let's go ahead and get you in, Ms. Curry. We haven't heard from you yet. So your initial reflections on the feedback from the Menti, and then any other thoughts you had about what we've already discussed.
Hello, can y'all hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. So I'm kind of agreeing with what Mr. Robinson said, and also remembering what Dr. Westbrook said as well. I'm from Austin, born and raised. I didn't really know what it was either until I got to college. My mom's from Detroit, so we didn't really celebrate it. And so when I got to college, I took an African-American history class, and that's when my professor actually broke it down. I was like, oh, that's what it is. That's what, So I didn't know either, but I love hearing Dr. Westbrook's story. I just saw a post the other day about, the house in Galveston where everybody marches to on Juneteenth. And I think that's so cool. And I think that, not Mackenzie, Pastor Crow's daughter said, our youth do not know why we celebrate it. We just know, oh, we go to eat barbecue, or we know we get a shirt. We don't really know why we do those things. And so I asked my 14-year-old, and he's like, no, I don't know. So it's important that we teach our youth what it means, why we're celebrating this thing. And I think the mentees said, it's part of our history. It's part of American history. We have to talk about it. It has to be discussed.
Really great point. American history is what it is. It's not Black history. It's not any other kind of history. It's American history. Good point there. All right. Any other reflections on the mentee question and feedback that we had from the panel? Ms. Westbrook, we'll get you back in.
So one of the things that I wanted to bring up, I saw the word liberation, and that got me to thinking about one of the issues in regards to the federal holiday becoming a federal holiday. I don't know if you realize this or not, but when it was voted on in the House on June 15th, there were 14 House representatives who voted against, and there were 415 who voted for. 2 of those 14 were from Texas, 2 representatives, one very near to us in regards to geographic location. The problem supposedly was that the word, it was the word, what was the word? Because the new holiday it actually has a specific name. It's called Independence, Juneteenth, Independence Day. There was a hookup on the word independence, and it was said that we shouldn't use the word independence, we should use the word emancipation. Thus, he was told by some of his colleagues, or they were told by their colleagues, I think you don't quite get this. When June 4th, when July 4th happened, and it was called July 4th, as we now call it today, there was a whole group of people who weren't in that celebration. Because though there was a liberation from the tyranny that we had with Great Britain, it wasn't for everybody on the lands of the United States. So it wasn't a celebration of independence. The independence part came when we had the Emancipation Proclamation. And thus, it needed to be clear. So there was a lot of floor discussion on the legislature at the Congress about why this should not be a holiday. There was also something said about, well, where will we stop? If we make this a federal holiday, what else we have to make a federal holiday? Well, let me say this. The last time we had a federal holiday, the 11th federal holiday, was Martin Luther King Day in 1983, 38 years ago. So we're not necessarily making every holiday a holiday, right? If we're talking almost 40 years between the last one and this one. So I wanted to just make sure that everybody understood the clarity in regards to this perspective of liberation, emancipation, independence, how they are alike, but how they're also different. And that was something that I noted on the mentee.
Yeah, we always get some great audience participation. I appreciate the thoughtfulness that we have on the mentee questions. We got more to come to on that one. I know, Ms. Smith, you had your hand eagerly up to get back into discussion. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I wanted to comment kind of on what Tyler had said earlier, but also on one of the mentee responses. And it specifically mentioned that disadvantaged communities in Texas were late to the game of being freed. And I want to make sure that we're clear, and I don't think this has been mentioned. We weren't late to the game. The plantation owners knew that the slaves had been freed. They had a vested interest in keeping that information from their slaves.
Absolutely.
In the same way that our government has had a vested interest in keeping us from celebrating this holiday since 1865. In the same way that Texas had a vested interest in keeping us from celebrating the holiday until 1980. And in the same way that the government and the education system has a vested interest in not teaching our children what Juneteenth was. I grew up in Hayes. I went to elementary, middle, and high school in Hayes. Never once did I learn about it. We learned that Texas like they freed their slaves 2 years late. We didn't know that there was a celebration. We don't know what Juneteenth was. And there's a reason for that. And I don't think that just because this has been made a federal holiday doesn't mean that the children are all of a sudden going to be taught it. That still is going to fall on us. And that's still going to fall. Like, absolutely, we need to start celebrating. We need to keep pushing. We need to keep talking about it as much as we can. We need to stray away from the commercialization of the holiday, of the celebration, just like Tyler warned, because that's how it gets watered down. That's how it gets whitewashed, and that's how it gets forgotten. But we need to remember that just because they signed a piece of paper doesn't mean that our learning is over. Same with Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Sure, it was 38 years ago, 40 years ago. We learn maybe 10 minutes of Martin Luther King. We learn his I Have a Dream speech, his whole entire life, all of his advocacy, all of his personal and political beliefs, super watered down, super whitewashed. So our education and our duty to inform the youth is not over with just Juneteenth becoming a federal holiday.
Certainly. Thank you, Ms. Smith, for making that point. You know, at the end of the video, it talked about how one of the slaves being whipped just like she was before the war, and then waiting for the harvest, the next harvest to go through. So very insightful thoughts there, Ms. Smith. Thank you for bringing that up. All right, let's see. Want to give, we have a few more minutes on this topic. Do we have any others that wanted to speak? Pastor Curl, we'll get you in.
So on the mentee question, I think the word that jumped out at me was equality. In order for there to be equality, that means a level playing field and an equal starting place. Before there can be equality, there has to be equity. Equity means that there's an adjustment up in order for there to be equal. We just recently celebrated, unfortunately, the 100 years celebration of the Tulsa Massacre. The destruction of Black Wall Street, where equity of families were altered, generations were changed, never to be recovered ever again. And so before we can really talk about equality, we have to deal with equity. You know, there are people that get upset if you say 40 acres and a mule. Well, that whole thing was about equity, or the preparation for equity, so therefore there could be equality. But there's no way for us to be equal if there's not equity. It is the proverbial Protestant work ethic. It is the J. Edgar Hoover, pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, a rugged individualism. But I don't have any boots. So how do I pull myself up by my own bootstraps when the systems didn't allow me to have any boots? So how am I going to pull myself up? So before we can talk about equality, we have to first deal with equity.
Powerful stuff, and I was really hopeful somebody would bring up the Tulsa race riots of 100 years ago. If you're not familiar with that, please go do yourself a favor and go Google that this evening and learn about that. Black Wall Street, a tragic part of American history. Officer Cleary, we want to get you in here. Your thoughts?
I just wanted to kind of take a quick step back. Everyone's talking about education. I think that's really where it starts with a lot of this. I grew up in Denver, Colorado. Never learned about Juneteenth. It wasn't until really the past several years that I actually ever did learn about it. I think that making it a national holiday is a really good first step, because people are going to ask questions, and kids are curious. People are curious. So just the fact that it is a national holiday, it's something that's, a little blurb on the bottom of a calendar, something taught in school, something mentioned in school, something mentioned in the workplace. People are going to start looking at, what is this? Why is it here? What is the history behind it? People have so many resources nowadays that they can educate themselves. So whether or not it gets taught in schools properly or right away, or how it's been taught in schools, I was not taught it in school. Raising those questions, raising that awareness, people will educate themselves, and I think that's a great first step.
Interesting thought. Yes, that is the part of this discussion, getting all kinds of perspectives, because I think it does have different impacts for different people, and the way we were raised, where we were raised, and various things like that, and where we might have learned or didn't learn about this. Really powerful discussion. So as much as I would like to continue this has been a really robust topic, and I appreciate the discussion by the panel on this. We do have 2 more sections to get to, so we're going to roll right into the second section here, which is this past year. We've all lived through it. We all, there's constant reminders of what has happened this past year, and there's certainly plenty to talk about. But I'd like the panel to briefly reflect on this past year. What have you learned about yourself? What have you learned about your community and society as a whole? How has your life been impacted or changed over this past year, both professionally and personally? What do you feel is the best way to improve, repair, or build upon communities and/or interactions and/or perspectives of law enforcement? Whom all needs to be involved with building those better relationships? While we're giving the panel a moment to think about that, we'll get ready to bring up the next Mentimeter question so that the audience has a moment to give their feedback. We'll go back to that same website and the same code. Question for the audience is a word or 2 describing your impressions, feelings of society and community relations from this past year. So we're going to really be digging in your vocabulary to only come up with 1 or 2 words. But the idea here is hopefully we'll see a bunch of words pop up on the screen. If words become bigger than others, that means they're being used multiple times. So we'll give the audience a few minutes to reflect on that while we go back to the panel. And it's paddle time. So let's get those paddles up. All right. We've got some... Everybody wants to talk on this one. Yeah, okay. All right. Well, let's see here. Let's go with... We'll go with Mr. Robinson. We'll get you to start us off on this discussion.
Thank you. So this discussion really resonated with me a lot. As we all know, everyone's been through this trying years, these past 2 years. And I think what it's shown me about our society, what it's shown me about our law enforcement, what it showed me about myself, that people have gone through very traumatic moments in time, whether it's different. You have the political views and fights, you have the race riots, you have depression, you have homelessness, you have starvation, you have kids in schools, you have financial resources not being there, you have the government not being there in a position that we think we need them. There's so many things that have happened, and to see people getting out in society nowadays, just seeing everything explode out of the homes, because everything was condensed, everything was confined in the homes. Now it's being exploded out to the communities. You see more violence, you see more hatred, you see a lot more bad mouth or whatever it may be on social media, and it's a lot of things that people just had pent up. And impression, anxiety, suicidalness is raising through the roof. You have mental illnesses raising through the roof. And it's just a lot of internal disposition and a lot of internal fight that people have to fight over the past year. And now it's making its way to society and it's just exploded. What I've learned about myself in this time and moment is that when I'm blessed to be where I'm at today, where I'm okay, but that just to know that I'm someone who's still standing, who's still fighting, and a great mentality and to have a great mindset about life still. Because people nowadays, you see people that surround you in environments, you don't know what they might do. Black, white, Hispanic, whoever you are, you don't know what they might do because everything is so, you don't know what people are thinking nowadays. People are watching more violent things, doing more violent things, and being violent is becoming a norm now, which is scary. You don't know. You have people being abducted. You have people doing suicide, mass killings. So you don't know what society will bring forth to the table. You have a pandemic. Now we're just coming out of a pandemic. People now want to get vaccinated. People want to get vaccinated. People now want to abide by rules that keep their neighbor safe. You don't know what society is going to have nowadays. But it shows that some people can be selfish. Some people also have a good heart and care for others. There's a fine line between what is safe and what is not safe. And sometimes going out your house isn't safe anymore. Now, if we're talking about the police and then how we're going to mend our relationship back together, I believe that comes with trust in the community. And I believe a lot of this trust will come from one, the police doing their due diligence as what they're supposed to do. But in the community, we have this burden on our shoulders now of, since we can't trust police officers to a certain extent, that we as a community have to take uphold and upheaval what we have to do ourselves, which means it might not be morally right. So it means I might have to go do something that I said I would never do, but I'm doing it to protect myself because I can't trust police. But it's not just all police; it's just certain ones. Because you don't always have bad policemen, but we as society equate one thing wrong, everything's wrong. So I believe when it comes to police and armed forces in the community, that we need to establish trust. And you may ask, where does that start? Well, there's many places that it can start, but it's just to choose the option of, are you going to listen? The community's been speaking this whole time about how to come together, how to bring the armed forces back into the community, how to stand right with people. But it's whether, if you're listening or not, to put that in application. So when you put in an application, then that's when we can move forward in that aspect. But in society as a general, as a whole, we have to understand that people are hurt, people are worn out, people are scared, people are frustrated. So as you walk in life, you have to really be cognitive of what surrounds you and what you're what you're getting yourself into, because you may never really ever know what people will do. So that's what I say.
Wow, thank you, Mr. Robinson. We have never spoke before today, but something told me you might have some things to say on that, and I can tell you really thought about that particular section there. Thank you for your thoughts. I'm going to go here to my left. Ms. Curl, you had your choose to speak up. I'd like to get your thoughts on the section, but also you're a young mother. You have a young child too. This past year in the pandemic and everything is going on. Share with us as well the perspective of that and how that has been this past year.
So I would have to say this past year has made me more aware. Just in general, it's made me more aware in my profession since we went back to school in the middle of a pandemic. It made me more aware of all the kids, their health and their safety, but also their mental health. And I don't think people realize just how much kids' mental health was affected from COVID. So if we see all of these adults and, they're getting arrested left and right and they're like, oh, it's their mental health, oh, it's their mental health. Nobody stops to think about, well, what about the children? Because we're talking about adults who supposed to know how to control their emotions, but now you have kids who don't even know how to control their emotions, and then add a pandemic on top of that, where you have to wear a mask. No, don't wear a mask. Go around them. No, don't go around them. Why do we have to stay home? Why can't I go to school and see my friends? So mental health has been a major issue in the school system, as well as, everything that happened with all of the police brutality made me more aware as well. I could see, even in our schools, how it affects children. It's not just what we see on TV, and it's not just the major stuff. It's the minor stuff of how differently children are treated. Even when you don't think you're treating somebody differently, you are. So it made me more aware in that aspect, and also more aware as a mother. I have to be more aware of what I'm teaching my daughter. The things that I surround her with, I have to make her more aware. So she's only 5, but she knows, okay, well, I have to go to school, I have to wear a mask. Oh, we're going to the store, I have to wear a mask. So it's just stuff like that, and you would never think that a 5-year-old would have to deal with that. A 5-year-old who's having to deal with racism, and she doesn't understand it, but I see it, so it's like I have to teach her about it. I have to educate her because I can't depend on the school system to do it because they're not going to, and at this point, they're not even required to. So I have to be the one to teach her, so it has to start at home. So this whole past year has made me much more aware. I saw the question about the law enforcement, and it made me remember about this time last year, there was a group of us that came to meet with the police officers, and we all had a conversation about, and that's whenever the George Floyd stuff was really, really big and fresh. And we all had a conversation, and then it didn't go anywhere. And I would say nobody's at fault because we didn't push it either, but we can't expect, like Tyler said, there to be that trust between us and law enforcement if nobody's talking to one another. So that conversation should have continued throughout the year. It's not just oh, well, I checked it off my list, so we're good. So there definitely has to be continued conversations to make other people aware and to make officers aware of how people of color are feeling. Because at the end of the day, they don't understand. They're not us. So we have to make them aware.
Wow, powerful stuff. Very interesting time being a parent and having young children, working in the education system. I'm going to follow you up with Ms. Curry. I'd also like to get your perspective, being in education and having children of various different ages. Tell us a little bit about your experiences these past year.
Yes, can y'all hear me? Yeah, it's been, it's been a different kind of year. I do have two boys, 14 and 22, a teenager and a young adult, and having to have conversations about, what do you do when you get pulled over? Law enforcement doesn't know that both of you have aspirations of being in law enforcement. They don't know that. When you get pulled over, you have to, what do you do? And my 14-year-old said, okay, he doesn't drive. He can drive. He doesn't drive. Sorry. He doesn't drive or anything, but he knows, if I get pulled over, I have to put my hands, he knows what he has to do. And we have to have those conversations. And it's scary. Like I saw some of the words on there. It's scary. It's somebody said awakening, heightened was a word on there. And it's just been a crazy year. I started off at layman at the high school level. It was crazy there. And then I ended working at the middle school level and having to have conversations about everything going on and the unknown and what do we do here and how do we do this. It's just been a tumultuous year as far as the pandemic and as far as race relations. And I don't ever remember it being, for me personally, I don't ever remember it being like this or this frightening or scary.
Thank you, Ms. Curry. Certainly know about those talks. I certainly had those as a young man as well with my dad, my uncles. And if you don't know what that talk is that we're talking about, just keep listening, or you'll probably hear more about that. Let's see. Thank you, Ms. Curry. Next, we will go to, we'll come back in person. Obviously, we are grateful to have Officer Cleary here with us today, and we cannot have a discussion like this without getting this perspective as well. So, Officer Cleary, tell us, certainly from a law enforcement perspective, but certainly, I mean, you're a person. You work for the City of College Police Department. You're an individual before you put on that uniform. Tell us a little bit about your perspectives, both as a professional and personally, things you've dealt with in your life through this past year.
Absolutely. First of all, I mean, I couldn't imagine being a teacher in this time, especially with the pandemic and everything going on. Something I really realized personally that I kind of went through this year was how influenced we are by what is on TV. Everything from the pandemic to everything that we saw about, the protests and just violence. Somebody said earlier that violence was becoming a norm, and it is amazing how much the media has really almost weaponized violence in all parts of our lives to push whatever point they want to get through. And it's become so normal on TV. As a cop, it obviously has been a pretty tough year as well. Myself and the people over at KPD, and I can't talk for everybody on a national level or even at a state level. I can kind of talk for what we are. Obviously we kind of watch, we see what's going on. We're very aware of it. It's in your face. Whenever you open social media, the news, TV, it's all over the place. We try to represent ourselves with respect and dignity, and we do. And we really, really push that. Watching all the news coverage, the idea of the collective mind was brought up at the first time we did this panel, and I don't remember who said it, unfortunately, but it was kind of an interesting thought, because when watching all this news footage, time and time again, you see these slogans against law enforcement, ACAB and, kill cops, and all these, things that people are pushing, and of course it's not everybody, but the media, you see it all the time on the media. So you start to get this perspective like, oh, there's, everybody hates us. Everyone is against us. It's, and you almost kind of start to get, oh, is it us against them? And it's not, though. And I realized that when doing the job and interacting with people in the community, that 99.9% of people that I interact with, it is a respectful, dignified conversation both ways. That people don't all hate us, that it's not, and I think it really is the media that is kind of almost weaponized it to where it's, us versus them, and them pitting up two groups against each other because it sells TV time, it sells ads, the monetizing of it, which is an unfortunate reality of the world that we live in. So I am excited about these conversations because I was there when the group of you guys came up and talked to us. And unfortunately, we couldn't do it at the time, but one thing that I really wanted to push at the time was, doing ride-alongs. Because I think that, A, gives, not only students, but pretty much everybody, the ability to see what we go through, why we do the things that we do, because the things that we do aren't normal things. People don't understand why we, ask people to step out of cars, that we do, X, Y, Z. But I think that's something that we need to push probably better as an association. I can't speak for the agency, but as an association, that transparency between the civilians that we do serve, and that's the way we see it. We serve the civilians that we work for. We'd love to get to meet people better. We'd love for you guys to understand what we do a little bit better, but we'd also love to see what you guys see and what our civilians and our citizens see and how they view us and how they view the things that we're doing, because I think that will help, make us better police officers and better people. So I'm curious to hear everyone else's thoughts. So.
No, thank you, Officer Clary. Really, really appreciate that perspective. And you're right. I'm glad that it was brought up from last year, y'all's discussion that y'all had at the PD after the events of last summer. And I appreciate you bringing up the ride-alongs and participating in that. I participated in the Citizens Police Academy. Those are typically everywhere in municipalities, in counties. You can do them with sheriff's offices. I think that is a great suggestion to have people participate in those. And for those that live in the city of Kyle, I believe we have our Citizens Police Academy coming back this fall. So keep an eye out for that. Check out our website. Certainly a powerful and impactful thing that you can participate as a citizen and see the perspective there as well. It was something I participated in many years ago and certainly still lives with me today. So just to even out the talk time, I think we need to get Mr. Davis back in here, and I believe you had your panel up to speak as well. Mr. Davis, if you could give us your reflections on this past year.
Well, this past year, it's sort of been a back and forth of the more things change, the more they stay the same. And that pretty much happened with Breonna Taylor dying, that happened with George Floyd dying. And all I kept thinking is, well, this is what happened when Eric Garner died. This is what happened when Trayvon Martin died and Michael Brown. And even then, you can go back in history. You end up with the LA riots. Before that, you had the Watts riot. This is something that has continued on for most of American history. One of the problems that we've seen sort of is this micro steps, sort of these half measures, really. And it's sort of the problem that we kind of see along with the defund the police movement. And I think Officer Clear went ahead and touched on this, where it's the media sort of perpetuating this, where it's the idea of defund the police and how that is used immediately as, let's get rid of all police departments. And no, we're trying to move funding over to where they can actually help people. And one of those is social interactions. One of those ways is to prevent people from being killed on the street. It doesn't necessarily mean just African Americans, it's everybody. It's something to keep everyone safe. And so when it's immediately focused onto these riots or mainly protests, who are mostly peaceful, and they're immediately used as, oh, half the country wants the police department's gone, it's insane and asinine. And I don't really see how you can possibly move forward or heal a divided country when it's something like that that is constantly moving. And it doesn't help when not only just the media is doing it, we are doing it to ourselves. We continue to talk with one another every day about, what is my opinion? What is your opinion? Do I get to continue being friends with you because you and I have the same opinion? And when that is sort of mixed away into sort of something as complex as racial issues or police department funding, or something that mainly belongs in society as a whole and isn't just one A, B, black, white thing. And I'm sorry, I went ahead and brought that up again, black and white, but it really is just kind of, this isn't something that's going to be solved overnight. This has happened for decades and decades and not centuries. This is just something that continues and needs to be worked on. And so seeing over the last year, when you end up with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and all these protests coming up, and people continue to think about, oh, why are they protesting? Why are they doing this? Don't they realize that America is the greatest country on earth? Don't they realize that we have the greatest police departments in the world? No. If they were, they wouldn't be protesting in the street. They would be fine and not having to worry about being shot in the back 17 times or having pretty much their esophagus just crushed for 8.5 minutes. They wouldn't have to worry about that if everything was just fine. So as opposed to sort of just the way I'm trying to, everything of the past year of just everyone looking at these protests and just shooting them down as, no, they're riots and they're just teenagers going ahead and throwing rocks and throwing off steam. No, think about, why are they doing this? Think about what happened, what perpetuated this. Why are people mad at police departments? Why are people mad at certain people in society? Why are people upset, and try to fix that? And taking half measures can't solve it anymore. We've been taking half measures forever. We've had it forever. You can even go back before MLK. You can go back before Juneteenth was really all that. You can go back before there was an America. This has been happening so much in American history that it really just needs to be fixed and rectified finally. And so over the last year, seeing that more, it's obviously we need to do better. We can't just doing these small little bits. We need to do something now.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Very powerful thoughts there. Now that we've gotten everybody on even speaking opportunities, let's go back to the Menti question and get the feedback from the audience on the question we provided to them, if we can get that back up here. So the question was, a word or two describing your impressions, feelings of society and community relations from this past year. We'll give the panel a few seconds to digest what they see here. See a number of different words. Wow. Wow. All right, let's see those paddles. All right, I see Ms. Smith and our virtual ones. Any other virtual panelists? Mr. Robinson, Mr. Davis. Okay, we've got two choose to listens over here. We got choose to speak. All right, Pastor Curl, we haven't heard from you in a while. Let's get you back in here.
That was intentional. I think that for me, the word that sticks out is awakening. And there's been an opportunity for a national awakening because we were forced to sit still and actually pay attention to what was going on in the world around us. I think the pandemic has given us an opportunity to see things within ourselves, within our systems of local and state and national government, our education systems, our churches. It's given us an opportunity to be awakened to see what is really happening and really see how far we've strayed away from original intent and how dysfunctional we really are. And so I think that awakened for an opportunity or a wasted opportunity. I think that the past year in my world, I have a very unique perspective because I'm a pastor, so I deal with people spiritually. I'm heavily involved in Hayes CISD. I'm the chaplain for the PD, so I get a chance to deal with law enforcement. So I know the things behind the scenes they deal with. I've been on ride-outs, or ride-alongs, so I know what that feels like, while yet and still being an African-American male in this country. So I've had a unique perspective, so I had a chance to look at all these various entities that are happening or things that have happened in these various entities, and we have a great opportunity, but I feel like we wasted it. I feel like this past year we had the opportunity for great progress, but now we're we're not post-pandemic, we're just post-vaccination. Well, some of us are. We can debate on that too. But It was awakening, a great opportunity for an awakening, for us to really see all the challenges that exist within the systems. We have a systems problem, but it's not a new systems problem. And the question is will we deal with the systems problem, or will we just placate those who have the problem and keep moving? So that's all I have for now.
Thank you, Pastor Crow. It's always whatever you have to give. We appreciate it, and certainly some really thought-provoking comments there. Let's go back up to our virtual panelists. Ms. Smith, you're another one of our panelists that has been in school this past year, dealing with that and all those challenges as a student. Talk to us a little bit about that as well. But also, you've been very active on your campus with various different things. Mentioned earlier about your work with the congressman. Share your thoughts on that as well with this particular topic, and then what you've seen from the Menti questions.
Yeah. As far as school, it's pretty much more of the same that's been said. The most that I've encountered doing advocacy work on campus is the mental health aspect of going to college fully virtually, which obviously is difficult. And when you have people that aren't on campus and they're in their own home environments, they're not able to be isolated from different issues that arise when you're at home, when you're with your siblings, when you're with your parents, when you're forced to go back to work to provide for your family. So that was mostly what I dealt with regards to being on campus. But there was also an aspect of police oversight. UT created a police oversight committee for our own police department for UTPD. And I sat on that committee for pretty much monthly meetings. We would review different rates of arrests and the like. But the Menti question, or the Menti response that I was drawn to the most was the word lost. And it was one of the smaller ones, but I personally feel that is where this past year has left me. I've grown, my dad is a Black police officer in San Marcos. So we've run into a little bit of conflict, the two of us. I am very outspoken in everyday life, but especially at home. So we're talking, we're arguing. And he's talking about what Officer Cleary mentioned, just how hard it is to see everything on TV, how hard it is to feel disrespected. And I completely empathize. But I say to him, you can take your uniform off. You cannot take your Black skin off. And if you went up to Minneapolis without your uniform on, those police officers see you first and foremost and almost entirely as a Black man. And can you imagine? I have immense privilege being lighter skinned, being sort of racially ambiguous. I can't imagine walking on the streets knowing anything that you can do, you'll be gunned down for. Anything. Sleeping, driving, walking down the street with your hands in your pocket, going for a jog, anything. And so it's left me feeling a little bit lost, because the rage that creates in a group of people, is valid. And we've mentioned how cyclical it is. I think it was Anthony who mentioned how cyclical this sort of thing is. And that rage just builds up and builds up for centuries. And every single time the rage arises, we say, calm down. It's going to happen. We're going to get there one day. We got to keep working at it. No. How many more people have to die before we say, no, we're going to do something big. This has to stop. And so I felt sort of lost, because it feels like no matter what we do, we're told it's not the right way, and we just have to keep waiting. And that rage just keeps building, because that's not an answer. And I want to push back a little bit about something that was said earlier, where it was like, it's nobody's fault. That's not true. In our society, it's hierarchical. We are the public citizens, and law enforcement has a hierarchical role above us. It's always the role of those who are above us to remedy the issue. If we've been saying for centuries how we're feeling, what the problem is, it is their role to remedy the issue. It is their responsibility. It's not ours to keep being murdered and to keep having to post all of these horrible, horrific videos of watching the life being drained out of people for something to change. That is more than enough. So I feel like I'm feeling a little bit lost. What's our next step? How can we get someone to listen to us when we've tried literally everything by the book? And we are talking about violence in a negative way and saying like it's become the norm. But at what point is violence the only alternative? Is it the only thing that we can do to bring a movement forward? Because every peaceful, nonviolent anything gets ignored, pushed to the side, and it has for 400 years. I don't know.
Thank you, Ms. McKenzie. Ms. Smith, I appreciate your comments on that. Certainly, you talked about a hierarchy. Certainly aware of that. Everyone knows I'm a city council member here in this city. You know, it goes in a certain order. Council members, they hire city managers. City managers hire police chiefs. There's an all-encompassing part of it, and that means we're all included. Elected officials, we're hired by the people. And so we need folks to participate not only in federal elections at incredible numbers, but we need to participate locally as well. That's just my 2 cents. Ms. Westbrook, we'll get your thoughts on this past year, your reflections, as well as what you saw on the Menti question, but also in your wealth of experience, you've also been in law enforcement in the past. So tell us a little bit about your thoughts as well on this.
Of checks and balances, which may or may not blended in the system. So it's an issue between the community and law enforcement. The idea is we pull a couple of people around the table to create this idea of checks and balances. So let's create a citizens advisory board that would be able to provide a citizen's perspective to the police about what's going on, as well as the police perspective to the citizens about what's going on. That's a conversation that could be had. And I think about in my profession, one of my professions is being a teacher. As a teacher, you're always being given an opinion of how you should do things. And the reason is because everybody's been through the school system. So they think they know what the school system is, right? So you're going to tell me how I need to teach in my classroom. But you've only seen it from the other side. You've not seen it from my side. So you have no idea as a teacher what is involved in being a teacher. Same way with the police officers. Everybody wants to tell them what they should do about their job, how they should do their job. But at the same time, you've not been on that side. So having some kind of system in place where you have an advisory board not to tell you how to do your job, but to be able to provide a perspective, I see it as a way of trying to take this system and give it more of a checks and balances. And it was a little similar to what Dex was saying in regards to who hires who and the levels and whatnot. But just something to think about. And so that's something that popped up in my head. One of those words that was on the list that came up was misinformation. So as we think about what it is that should and should not be taught in the classroom, it boils down to leaving out information because it makes the other guy look bad. This is what this is all about. The story needs to be the good, the bad, and the ugly, all told at the same time so you can get a better perspective. If you're only telling the good and not telling the other components of it, history can repeat itself. Yes. Patterns can continue, as my colleague Anthony has said. Anthony, you can call me Vanessa. So this is going over and over again because the whole story has not been told. But once the whole story has been told, perhaps we now have a different perspective. The more new people find out about what Juneteenth is and what that means, it changes the perspective. On our very first Peace and Progress, one of our colleagues spoke about the the Texas Constitution. And the Texas Constitution was basically said, here is what you need to do to make sure you keep your slaves. And it was directly connected to some of the statutes that we have around. And the point was made, they started off saying they wanted slavery, and if you wanted to free your slaves, you couldn't. And at the exact same time, we want to put these folks on pedestals. But if we knew the good, the bad, and the ugly, would they have made it to the pedestal? So that's just a point that I wanted everybody to just get. The awakening came up, and my awakening was this. As I was at home and listening to more and more things and doing more reading, there was opportunities for a lot of companies, organizations, and different agencies to address what needed to happen for a better U.S. There was information where companies wrote a new proposition saying, from now on, we're going to do this, and we're going to do that, and we're going to make sure everybody is included, and we're going to make sure that everybody knows that everybody is equal. But at the exact same time, when I looked at the senior leadership of the organization, the company, it wasn't diverse. So you're preaching, let's make it equal for everybody, but your board of directors has no diverseness on it. So that's kind of what Pastor was saying earlier. That's like two things going up against each other for the most part. And so how do you fix that? Well, not only write that proposition or that proposal or that resolution about what you're now going to do, but how is it that you're going to change it so that others can be involved in the process? If you don't have any people of color on your leadership team, then what do you need to do to make that happen? Because it's good to write it down. It's a nice resolution, but it means what? What you gonna do about it? That's the layman's way of saying it. What you gonna do about it now? Okay, we got it. What you gonna do about it? And then empathetic was something that came up on the screen. This idea of empathy. Us seeing a man die on TV in real-time life made a lot of people empathetic and go, whoa, okay, now I heard about it, and they talked about it, but I actually saw it. And that changed a lot of people around saying, okay, something's wrong. But what we've been trying to say is that it's been happening for a long time. And y'all need to do something. And so now maybe if you've seen it, maybe something can happen because of it. And this idea of being empathetic, regardless of who I am, where I work, who I interact with, there's empathy involved in being a human, where there's a human side to what you are supposed to be doing as a human being. If you take away skin color, everybody looks like muscle red and bloody. That's how it looks with the skin color removed. And so we all walked around like that. We couldn't put people into labels and silos and that kind of thing. And that silo thing has seemed to be what has gotten us in trouble. So the empathetic part is maybe now heightened, but maybe not. So I'm gonna stop there.
Thank you. Wow. Yeah, this is, as the first section as well, very in-depth discussion, very thoughtful conversation by the panel. I would love to continue to circle the wagon on this one, but we are limited on time, and I definitely want to get in this next section here. So we're going to jump into that, and that's family and community. And we will bring up the mentee question for our audience here. All right. Audience, whom in your family or network of relationships inspires you? Father, mother, etc. Feel free to generally say or share their actual name. So the reason while the panel's thinking on this and the audience is typing up their parts here, so one of the reasons that this idea came to me to do these dialogues and pieces in progress is because I was raised in a family where we did exactly this. We sat around and we had discussions. and they were lively, and we talk loud in my family. Some people might come in and think we're arguing. I'm sure some of y'all might live in families like that, but it's just talking and having a discussion. But we're family, and then we moved on from that, and we hugged each other, and we loved each other, and things like that. And that's the idea with these Pete's and Progress events, is to have those discussions. So with this last section here that we're going to talk about, I'd like for us to talk as if we were family, using each other's first names. So we have Anthony, we have Mackenzie, we have Danye, we have Tyler, we have Vanessa, we have Marquette. I don't think I've ever said that before. We have Morgan, we have Philip, and I'm Dex in this section. So we'll give the audience to continue to give their perspectives, but these are the questions proposed to the panel. Talk about what your family does when celebrating holidays, whether it be Juneteenth or others you would like to share. Talk a little bit about your lineage and family history. What makes you so proud and encouraged by those you have come from? Please explain and elaborate on that. What has inspired you in your role, your profession, your community work, your volunteering. All right, we'll get those paddles up one last time here. And then I'm looking at my virtual panelists. All right. Danye, yeah, we're using first names here. We haven't heard from you in a while. Your thoughts on this question, set of questions here.
Okay, so I'm having some connectivity issues, so I'll just try to keep going. My person has always been my mom, single parent, upbringing, educated background. I shouldn't have went first. I'm drawing a blank. We were always taught the importance of education, and that's what I've always been my thing that I fall back on. I'm always enrolling in school. I'm always enrolling in a class. I'm always trying to learn something or further my education somehow. I like learning from other people. So just today, listening to y'all and everybody else's perspectives is a big deal to me. I have a notepad that I've been taking notes on, and I've been following everything you all have said today. And I really appreciate that, because to me, you can never stop learning, and you can always, learn from other people and other people's perspectives and stuff like that. What everybody has said, Dr. Westbrook, Mr. Officer Cleary, everything you guys have said, I hear you. I appreciate you.
Certainly.
Thank you.
No. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Miss. Thank you, Danya. We appreciate that, and thank you for your time. We know you're out of town, and thank you for being with us today. So the rest of the panel, with time in consideration here, 60 seconds or less. I'm going to try to go through everyone and get your reflections on this part and this topic here. So let's go to Mr. Robinson. We haven't heard from you in a while. Your thoughts on this last topic?
Yeah, this is probably my favorite topic of all. And I say that because I get to give shout outs. But I really love to say that my family, my mom, my dad, my brother, my cousin, and especially my pastor has been definitely in my corner, Pastor Curl. They have definitely my corner spiritually and just holistically. In the main the message where it has the names and the words up there, there's two words that I liked, and it says shift and hopeful. Because there was hopefulness in the shift. There was growth in the shift. There was love in the shift. There was everything in the shift if you found it. But you had to search for it. And I'm glad that I was surrounded by my spiritual family. And I'm glad that this shift created my natural family to come closer together and grow together spiritually and grow together as a unified body. And I think that's what kept me through the pandemic mostly. But I really do love the people that surrounded me in this environment. And even though you can talk about lineage and what you do for these celebrations, I just want to celebrate the moment that I have now, because life can be here today and gone tomorrow. It's a fleeting thing. People aren't guaranteed the next day. People aren't guaranteed the next moment, but the people that surround you are guaranteed for that moment. And so I really appreciate the people like my natural family and my spiritual family for always being in my corner as I was there for them. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Thank you for being here today. Really appreciate your thoughts. Okay, 60 seconds or less. Mr. Davis, your thoughts on this final topic here.
For me, I'm mostly proud of both my parents. My dad mainly for his work ethic and the way on how he continues to move forward despite all the challenges that he's made over the last 20 years, helping raise a kid and one that isn't even his own. My mother, who continues to strive every day, going through stress and all this, and trying to make time for herself and trying to push forward. My first grade teacher, Miss Sari, who continues to stay in contact with me for being a massive supporting role. Um, Dr. DeSoto down at Texas State for showing me that learning and education doesn't necessarily, even from the other side, doesn't necessarily have to be downtrodden and necessarily focused straight on a textbook. And it's about enjoying and understanding and learning through life.
Wow, powerful stuff. And shout out to those parents and guardians that are raising children that aren't their own. I'm a product of that, and so I appreciate you sharing that, Mr. Davis. Let's see, we'll go to Ms. Smith. Your thoughts on this final section.
Yeah, my mom and dad both raised me to just think of myself last. And so I appreciate that from them. And I think that that's what drives my advocacy work and sort of like is driving the arc of my future and my dreams. A lot of the things that I argue for, advocate for most passionately don't impact me or my family directly. But I feel like the people that they do impact are my family regardless. And I feel it as if it were impacting my little sister or my mom. And so I really appreciate from both of my parents just that empathy and looking at everyone as if they're your blood.
That's awesome. Really well said, Ms. Smith. I'm with Mr. Robertson on this. This particular section I was particularly excited about because we all have family of some kind and people that inspire us. And I wanted to give the panel an opportunity to do something that is not we don't typically get that opportunity to give the flowers while people are living, right? So, all right. So I think we have gotten every virtual panelist in. So now we're going to go down to our in-person panel. Officer Clear, you want to give us your thoughts on the last section here, dealing with family and those that have inspired you?
Absolutely. My family has always been a huge part of who I am and where I've come from. Made me extremely proud. Instilled in me to be proud in everything that I've done, and so I've kind of carried that through my military career, my law enforcement, education, and everything that I've done. So I really have them to thank for that. So, I mean, obviously, family is kind of a cornerstone of the foundation that has always built me. So.
And you're about to start your own. So congratulations to you, sir. An opportunity to carry that on. Congratulations. Ms. Curl, Morgan, your thoughts on this last section here?
I would also have to agree with everybody and say family, and agree with pretty much everybody that put a word on the screen and say Pastor Curl because he's my dad. But definitely grateful because I know you reached out to him and asked him to pick two people, to bring with them. So the fact that he had the confidence in me to be up in front of everybody because I was extremely nervous. But I'm just grateful that I got the opportunity because stuff like this is where we get a better understanding. And it kind of goes back to that last question of if we don't meet in the middle somewhere, there will never be an understanding. So yes, there's a hierarchy, but at the end of the day, just for the purpose of who's here, so Officer Cleary obviously is not Black. I am not an officer. So there is no way for him to understand my world and me to understand his world unless we meet in the middle. So there has to be an understanding.
Wow. Well, whatever your concern or trepidation was for being on this panel, my sister, you have spoken your truth, and I'm so happy that you were a part of it. Thank you. We'll go here to Ms. Westbrook. Your thoughts and inspiration.
And Vanessa.
Yes, Vanessa. Yes, you're right. Can't even follow my own rules. Yes.
Okay, so something that popped in my mind was community. And I'm going to start with my spiritual community because as a child, I grew up in a church where my parents went and all the extended parents that were in the church, that we as children grew up into young adults and adults being in this church that was surrounded with love and commitment to us becoming great citizens. Now, that was the church that I grew up in as a child. I want to say now, this community right here, this is the third time we've done this. Some of us have been on here before, and we are basically saying we're putting ourselves out there on TV in front of you, and we're speaking our minds in the truth. And we've done this before. Some of us are new joining the group, but this community is a positive for me because we can come together and sit down and have conversations, especially with us veterans who've done this before. So I think the community that we're living in, it's not great. We know it. We're trying to fix it. We're trying to enhance it. And at the same time, we are willing to sit at the table and be able to have a discussion, as well as those who are coming into the audience to sit and be a part of this also. So I think when you think about a community will thrive if the members of the community work in the community. There's one thing to do where you can sit and complain, but unless you've got a solution to go with that complaint, then that's not going to help in the long run. So work as a team, work as a community to see what we can do. And we have subsets of communities. We have this community, then we have the community in my neighborhood, the community of my family. It's like a big Venn diagram. And it all has to kind of work together in order for it to work well. But when pieces don't work, then we have a problem, and this piece doesn't work, and it's like a clock. If this dial stops turning, then this dial stops turning, then this dial and then you don't have a watch that works anymore. So we have to work on that from a perspective of the community, whether it's the community of your immediate family, or your church family, your neighborhood, the county, the city that you're in. They all have to kind of work together, and we have to, all as she said, we have to meet in the middle and be able to have this conversation. So I'm gonna leave us with that. Oh, can I just say, tomorrow, if you don't have anything to do, we've got things going on for Juneteenth in Buda as well as San Marcos. Come out and have some fun, where the community is going to come together and have a great time to celebrate Juneteenth. So, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Vanessa. And Marquette, that's not.
It's got to get used to it. It's got to get used to it.
I'd like for you to wrap us up and give us a close on panel comments. So if you could close us out with your final thoughts on this section and just in general.
Sure. First of all, I'm thankful for being invited for the third time and being a veteran with Vanessa. She mentioned community. There's no community without there being common unity. And so in order for us to have community, there must be something that's common that unifies us together. I was blessed out of a situation that people may not think would be a blessing. I was born to teenage parents. My mother was 16 when I was born. My dad was 17. But I had a strong community of grandparents who stood in and helped out and supported and made sure that I had whatever I needed. My mother raised 3 boys as a single mom, and we didn't go without anything. I had a maternal grandmother who stepped in and made sure, and paternal grandmother and grandfather who stepped in. And so my natural community, was very supportive, very encouraging. I'm the first person in my family to get a college degree, or a graduate level degree at that. But I wouldn't have done that without them. So my grandmother, my mother are very inspirational for me. But in the latter part of my life, probably the most inspirational person for me is my spiritual father, Dr. Dana Carson. And what makes him so inspirational for me is he was a high school dropout from Chicago, Illinois, that now has 8 earned degrees. 8 earned degrees. He's just an amazing man who's accomplished so many amazing things. He's taught me how to be a leader. He's taught me how to be a man. He's taught me how to appreciate education and scholarship, which in my natural family, that's not something, that was pushed. It was just get a job. So I'm grateful for and blessed for the communities that God has placed me in. And then In 2014, God spoke to me and told me to plant a church in this community. And in 2016, I left a 23-year corporate career, was pretty successful at it, and walked away, sold my home in Round Rock, started over with my wife. We started over from scratch, no job, ministry, no income, and we started all completely over because it's what God told me to do, was to be a part of this community. And so to me, it's an important opportunity for the community to truly become unified. And if we can become unified as a community, there's some great things that we can accomplish and be a model to the other communities that are around us, to have a prototype for them to follow. And so I look forward to the Peace and Progress Dialogue not being a City of Kyle thing, but a Hays County thing. And eventually it being, a Central Texas discussion, not just something that starts here. Of course, the University of Texas, their motto is what starts here changes the world. But I believe that what starts here in Kyle, I believe we can do some world-changing things too. So, I commend, City Councilman Ellison and all those that are part of the City Council here for taking a bold step to do such a thing in a time where it may not be fully appreciated. But, great things can come from very small and humble beginnings. And so we just got to keep building. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you. Wow, my mind is blown. This has been another great evening of discussion and conversation here tonight. With that in mind, I'd like to get, Grant, if you could get our next Mentimeter question up, our final one for the evening. Got some panelists that are inspirations there. All right, our final Mentimeter question, one word. So it'll be on the same, everything's the same. One word to describe this event. If we could have our audience, both in person and virtually. I think we'll hopefully get it back up there. Yes, there we go. One word to describe this event. And if we could have the audience, both in person and virtually watching, start to enter those. While we're doing that, I'd like to thank our panel for being here today. Can we get a round of applause for our wonderful panel today? Fantastic discussion. I know they feel this way. I feel this way. I'm sure the audience feels this way. There's certainly a lot more we'd like to unpack in some of those previous sections. The thing is, though, the idea with this is to be a conversation starter. The idea of this is to then go back to your homes, go back to your communities, go back to your churches, your organizations, things like that, and continue these discussions and have those discussions with your neighbors and different people in the community. That's the idea of this, is just to start it. This is not to answer all the questions or complete it. The idea is to start it. Yes, sir.
I would like to make a comment.
Real briefly, sir. Real briefly.
I thank all of you because this has been very informative. It has opened my eyes enormously. And one of the things that stayed out is the fact that it's been 38 years since we've had a national holiday. And because that's the case, we should celebrate that. The fact of the matter is it's not over, it's just the beginning. The other point that Ms. Westbrook made, Dr. Westbrook, Vanessa, was that there was empathy when everyone saw what transpired on the television with George Floyd. Unfortunately, that empathy did not go to Congress. Because if that was the case, we wouldn't be in the situation we're in now with the laws of changing voting rights. That situation wouldn't be in our states, where even though the teachers are being told what to do, there's not enough empathy in leadership to say that this is a situation that needs to be discussed in our schools, that needs to be taught in our schools. And the reason that there's no empathy in there is because they don't want it. And that's why we're in the situation that we're in today, because there are individuals that don't want to change the system. There's those who want to change the system to the negative as far as people of color are concerned. And for that, we have to take advantage.
Thank you, sir. No, absolutely. I appreciate that. And I'm glad I took the moment to do that. And I appreciate your words. And maybe we'll get you on a future panel as well. But with that in mind, rolling right into that, maybe God works in mysterious ways. So we'll go into, we actually have a graphic here where we are asking for future panelists and topics of discussion. So we'll be doing our third Dialogue for Peace and Progress for the year. It'll be October 1st. I know we have a graphic. I'm waiting for that to come up and help me. But either way, this will be in accordance to Hispanic Heritage Month, which runs through November 15th through October 15th. Yes, there we go. October 1st. I was correct. October 1st, Friday at 7 p.m., we'll be doing our third Dialogue for Peace and Progress, celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month. So if you or you know of anyone interested in being a future panelist, please email me at dellison, DELLISON, at cityofkyle.com. I'd love to hear either ideas of topics or panelists that you might recommend yourself or another. I'd love to hear that and certainly would appreciate that feedback. So we'll close out the program here. I certainly once again want to thank our panel. For those that are here in person, we have a little keepsake for you. So I'm just participating in the discussion, giving your thoughtful, thought-provoking comments and thoughts here for us to all take some feedback and think on and carry into our lives and into our communities. Once again, thank everyone for being here. Happy Jubilee Day, happy Freedom Day, happy Emancipation Day, happy Juneteenth national holiday. Thank you, everyone.
Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun.
Those panelists joining virtually. I'm going to be on video and say 1, 2, 3 so that you know when we're taking the photo. We're getting everyone together right now. Thank you so much for staying on late.